What is a principal SE? We'll start there.
It's a good question. I believe it means that I get more tasks than the senior.
Okay. So it's basically the next step for someone who's looking to move up without going into a management role.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I did working with Faroot is helping to kind of establish a career path for the SE track, right? And given the size that we are, we're not ready for a titled SE leader, given our size.
Right.
So to show some career progression, what we did was we decided on sales engineer, senior sales engineer, and then principal sales engineer. And this way, we have a nice career path for those that choose to move up in the individual contributor role. And then from there, you can kind of pivot into the management layer as we continue to build that out.
Okay. I know other companies also have like staff and senior staff. You guys kind of forewent that, just too many layers.
Yeah, too many layers. I do think that when you're, the size of VMware, those things make sense. And if things like, senior sales engineer one, senior sales engineer two, there's like subsequent layers. But I haven't seen that really much in cyber. No one has truly hit that level of scale
Yeah.
that you needed to go. We needed to go that deep.
Yeah. I feel like I work for a company, a big company, 15,000 employees, and they still don't have that staff and senior staff. So I think it's specific to some companies, but it's not. It's I guess it's a path forward for some folks.
Yes.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. Canadian startup.
Yes.
Okay. How, is it different from an American startup, or is it just Canadian in front of it?
Just happen to be based out of Canada, so we're out of Toronto. But ironically, there is no physical offices. We're a completely remote organization. So we have people all over the US, a couple of folks in Canada as well.
And how long have you been with that company?
It was just over a year. So I actually celebrated 1 year with them last month.
Nice. So the reason I'm asking is it's hard enough to get onboarded as a sales engineer when you can go in person and talk to people. How has your
Yes.
experience been with virtual onboarding? And like big part of our job is connecting, building relationships. How has that been
Yes.
going?
Yeah, it's actually been great. So I'm probably in a little bit of a unique position here. I was primarily a remote employee before it was COVID cool, as I like to say.
Yeah.
And I'm used to more of the remote culture and the remote style of work. So the last company that I worked for, even though I, traveled a lot, went to their physical corporate office on the West Coast, I was a remote employee for 4 years, right? And just
Okay.
worked from home when I wasn't traveling and made it happen just like that. So kind of going into the company I work for Root, not much of a change, right? I kind of knew what onboarding looked like. Actually, I did most of my own onboarding because I was their first SE hire. So I built most of the technical onboarding as I was onboarding into more of the company HR process.
Okay.
And then we used that as a handbook to essentially onboard additional employees, both on the development and sales side of the house too. So it's actually been pretty good in terms of knowing what to look for, kind of the things that you need in a culture of a company to stay connected. And we have a couple of things in the works in terms of planning some physical meetups of the company. We're still pretty small, about 20-25 people. So we're small enough where we can bring the whole company together in one location. So
Okay. So it's not 25 SEs, it's 25 people in total.
25 people, yeah.
Right. Okay. And so I would talk me through your thought process when you not only did you need to onboard, you actually need to build the onboarding. What was the
Yes.
first thing you thought of? Like personally, I would cry for a bit and then I actually start get to work. So if you skip the crying part, what was the first thing you actually thought about while trying to
Yeah.
build an onboarding process?
Yeah, I love this question. So, any role that I've taken as an SE in the last decade in cyber, let's say, I always approach it looking at a way to automate my role to the point where I'm making myself obsolete. It's always the mindset I go into it with. Now, obviously, you can't automate everything being an SE. There's always going to be some, human interaction. But if you use that mindset going into it, anytime you do things like onboarding or training or learning like a net new product from an acquisition, if you're taking really good notes, building almost like bite-sized learning for those that come after you. You start to develop this pattern where it doesn't matter if you move on to another role, another company, or you grow a team. There's always something left. You're kind of like leaving behind this little legacy of, here are the different pieces that got put in place to help those that come after you. So having that mindset, that's just how I approached it going into Faroot, right? Sat down, old school notebook and a pen, and as we went through, guys, give me the product demo, walk me through what a POC looks like if you've done them before, tell me all about the HR handbook, essentially, how do you onboard people into the company. So as I walk through and I make notes, I just am and identifying, okay, gap here, this makes sense. Let's change some language here to make it easier. And, it doesn't work for everybody, but having those small tweaks kind of put in place, when I'm done onboarding, I now have kind of like an employee handbook, both for myself and as a quick win to give back to the leadership team and say, hey, you guys had a Google Doc. Here's V2 of that and all the things that I found along the way.
So it is a small company. It's not overwhelming by any means in terms of the size of the company. But
right.
I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, because assumptions are usually not a good thing, but there are probably salespeople that were hired before you. Is that accurate, or were you hired before salespeople?
I was number 2. So there was a sales leader that was hired before me who had been working with the company. And then I was the first technical hire. So we were at that cusp of founder-led sales, right? And then you're starting to transition out of founder-led sales into handing it off to a direct sales team. So as the first technical hire, I worked with the sales leader, and we started putting together, here's what a POC looks like. Here's what a structured demo looks like. So there was some really good customer stories, and there were some really good learnings that were put in place and kind of written out before I got there. We started to work through, how does that translate into actual technical selling after I got hired.
And there were also probably product management or product people who create the product.
We have a CTO who is in charge of our product, and I actually work really closely with him. So you asked me earlier, what does a principal do? One of the things that I'm taking more responsibility of in a principal role is actually working more closely with product, right? In kind of being, I don't want to say a full product manager, but helping kind of fill the gap of product management, where instead of having to go from SE to product manager to dev, and have that middle path there, I actually am a direct bridge to our development team now, where we can give them direct feedback and requirements straight from customers and help translate that into user stories much faster.